All right, Dan, we are now 2 games deep in the new college football playoff, the expanded version. We had Notre Dame win on Friday night. Today, to start things off, Penn State, a resounding victor over SMU. This one played, of course, in Happy Valley at Beaver Stadium. I have been inundated with friends who are at the game, messaging me just very, very bluntly with, it is effing cold. It's a cold day. If you watch the game, you can see that there were some issues holding on to the football, in some cases maybe throwing the football, i.e. Kevin Jennings. It was not a pretty state of affairs for the SMU Mustangs, Dan, traveling north and getting it handed to him by Penn State.
The environment was positively like NFL films. The gusts of wind, the wind is a raider. Dun, 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 dun. Gusts of wind up to like 20, 30 miles an hour. Real feel, something like 10, 12 degrees.
Really cold up here. Really cold up here.
I enjoyed the turf analysis that the sod, the grass, whatever, was into its dormant phase.
Quinn Kessnick was very into the sod.
I love that. I love that so much. And honestly, slow start for Penn State on offense. Really couldn't find footing. SMU came out with a nice little game plan. It was balanced. They were going downfield. And Penn State was like, well, why don't we start this off with a couple pick sixes? Give ourselves a nice little cush. And they did. And it was over from there, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah. I'm glad that you bring that up about Penn State on offense to start, because I was watching the game with a fellow Penn Stater, and our instant reaction was, wow, they seemed flat. And we couldn't tell if it was just the microphones were different on the TNT broadcast, or for whatever reason the vibe was off, but it did feel like they were flat to come out. And I agree. It seemed like, at least to start, SMU had a decent game plan. They ran what appeared to be a naked bootleg, but then Kevin Jennings got a little greedy, tried to throw it into the end zone to get an opening score that was broken up. It didn't exactly work out for them. And as you said, it kind of went downhill from there. Ultimately, this was an instance to me of Penn State dominating in the fashion that I described on our preview show. Not to pat myself on the back, but if you can get pressure on Kevin Jennings without blitzing, I think if you mix in the state of affairs, which was a really high leverage situation on the road, in this case, in frigid temperatures, all of those things combined seemed like they were a little too much for him. And it showed there were some really bad picks. I don't know if he was having trouble holding on to the football. We were joking here that, are they like swapping out the football for a greased pig? It didn't seem like he ever really had a good grip on it.
No.
Especially during his third interception. It just was not a good performance by Kevin Jennings, who for a good chunk of this season has put the offense on his back. We saw what they did in the ACC title game, coming back from behind, almost winning that game in improbable fashion from Clemson. We did not get that version of Kevin Jennings. The line in front of him did not do him any favors. There was a guy breathing down his neck pretty much on every drop back. That didn't help either. It just felt to me like SMU was overmatched. I don't know if we need any deeper analysis other than to say that the Penn State defense really controlled the point of attack.
Yes.
They took SMU out of their rhythm, maybe save for that first possession where it felt like the Mustangs had a little bit going. Penn State was able to ride that to victory.
Well, look, you seem to be wanting to become the engineer of the Underthink Express, and I think that is the correct move here. That is the correct instinct. We saw SMU struggle a little bit up front against Clemson, especially early on, the tackles getting beaten, forcing Kevin Jennings into quicker decisions than he probably wanted to make. It seemed like the combination of DDS and Abdul Carter on the outside, and really anybody who was rotating in along that defensive line, the combination of those players winning their blocks to an overwhelming degree, and just the picture Penn State's defense was giving Kevin Jennings, the number of snaps that he took and stepped into the pocket and made a decision in rhythm can be counted on a hand.
Yeah.
And maybe a hand that has gone through some trauma. I don't know. It always seemed like he was rolling out and doing like the fake roll to the weak side and then roll out to his right and, hope something magically opened up before he got to the sideline. And that was the case when it was an SMU team down 14-0, down 30-3, whatever, 31-3. There was just no comfort. Kevin Jennings looked as if he was awakened out of a dead sleep by receiving a snap against the Penn State defense. Like, what am I going? What's the play? I don't know. And that's credit to Penn State's defense. That's credit to the preparation that Tom Allen and the Penn State put into this game. And again, let's hop aboard the Underthink Express. Penn State has better players.
Well,
Penn State has better college football players than SMU does. It doesn't negate SMU's season, but it was very clear that you even take away the pick sixes early that put Penn State up 14-0, that anytime SMU would have a nice Brashard Smith run for 8 or would find somebody open in the seam, they couldn't string together plays at all.
They could. And one thing I think that jumped out to me, having gone back and watched all of the SMU games this year on several different occasions, I mentioned this to you when we did the playoff preview show a couple episodes back now. You can see very clearly the creativity in their play calling.
Yes.
You can see they have fresh ideas. They're not doing the same thing over and over again. So what did they try in this game? Well, they weren't able to give Kevin Jennings a clean pocket. At some point, then they started to try and move things outside, move the point of attack very quickly to the outside, a quick wide receiver screen, something of that nature. Even in those instances, Penn State was good enough out on the perimeter to break through the blocks from wide receivers and get a quick stop. It just didn't seem like anything SMU tried was really getting any traction against this Penn State defense. So to your point, obviously the preparation was top-notch. I would say on the Penn State offensive side, not exactly a banner passing game for Drew Allar. There were guys open that I think he missed.
No.
We are long past the point in the season, certainly as you get into playoff tournament-style football.
He's a dome guy now, Ty. You saw all the throws against Oregon and Indy. You know, it's a slippery, hard, frozen football.
Maybe he is. I don't know. But we are so far past that point now where the stats matter, where the style points matter, where we're trying to define what these teams are at this point as we're talking to each other a few days before the Christmas holiday, Dan, right? Course. You kind of are who you are at this point. It's about surviving and advancing. Penn State did it with defense. They were able to use their defense to score multiple touchdowns. They were also able over the course of time to start leaning back on that ground attack. Another good game, maybe not quite as dynamic as we saw in the Big Ten title game from Nick Singleton, from Katron Allen, but both of those guys ended up eating pretty well at the end of the day. This was not like a banner game for Tyler Warren. They didn't even really need to use Tyler Warren that much. So it'll be interesting to see what the game plan looks like moving forward now. They've got a game against Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl on New Year's Eve. How do things change? From my vantage point, it's another game just on the surface. The offensive game plan for Boise State seems pretty well telegraphed at this point. We know who their best player is. We know who they're going to try to get the ball to in space behind the line of scrimmage. Penn State tends to thrive in those situations when they know what's coming. Would like to get a little bit more out of that offense, but you will take this kind of performance for sure from the defense.
Yes, absolutely. You know what? Here's the thing, too, about SMU on defense. They've got some players up front. They couldn't stay on the field for 4 quarters worth of football. Like, they made plays against this Penn State front. They were shedding offensive linemen for Penn State. They were getting in Drew Allar's face. They were flushing from the pocket. And even on 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s, like, they were forcing Drew Allar into having to scramble for first downs. Something he didn't, obviously, the play call didn't call for that. And so this was I think it was a nice defensive line for SMU. Just if their own offense is getting off the field as quickly.
They couldn't do it all. They couldn't do everything on their
the score
own.
Doesn't represent what their ceiling is as a defense, especially up front, because there was just no trace of complimentary football.
There wasn't. And Tom Luganbill, who, I've complimented many times over now, working the sideline for this game, had a bit of analysis on Kevin Jennings, saying he wasn't looking downfield. His eyes weren't downfield. His eyes were on the pass rush. That affected his footwork. That affected his accuracy. All of these things are connected. To some extent, you could say the same of Drew Allar, at least early on in the football game, because he did not look comfortable. His throws were off the mark. I don't know to what end the cold played into it for both quarterbacks, but neither one truly looked all that comfortable throughout the course of the game. I guess the main difference being that Drew Allar was able to use his legs in some key situations to extend drives to keep Penn State's offense on the field. This is a game that, again, will be defined by defense. It's a defense that we're going to continue talking about. If you're a Penn State fan, I've got my Penn State hat on, proud alum here.
Yeah.
This is a situation now. You're looking at this bracket. You're feeling pretty good. You're feeling pretty good about getting to the semifinals, getting through that matchup against Boise State, we will, of course, have an episode where we preview the quarterfinals, but you got to like your chances. You just have to.
Let me ask you this, because we're obviously recording this in the shadow of Penn State's dominant win over SMU. You have certain degrees of allegiance. I don't know what your exact pie chart looks like, if that's too personal a question. You feeling better about Notre Dame or Penn State in this moment, independent of opponent, just in terms of vacuum quality?
Vacuum quality, I probably feel a little bit better about Penn State at this moment.
Okay. Higher ceiling because of maybe a little more offensive firepower.
A little more offensive firepower. I like the fact that they genuinely at least have something of a weapon that they can throw to. I still feel like we're trying to define who that is on the Notre Dame side. These offenses are not apples to apples.
No,
not in the least. But it feels to me like Penn State has more weapons on offense. Obviously, the defense is never going to let them down, and I just kind of like where they're at now, 2 games running after going toe-to-toe with Oregon for a good chunk of that game, winning in resounding fashion by a 38-10 final over SMU at home in the playoff. That's a pretty good 2-game streak.
It's okay. So we are now officially a step closer to getting a playoff semifinal of Notre Dame Penn State.
I don't want to talk about it. Let's not jinx it.
Playing that game, Miami, and everybody knows you to be Mr. 305, Mr. Worldwide.
Yeah.
Would you go?
I think I might have to come up with something. Yeah. I might have to come up with something and do the Laura Quinn with like the half and half jersey.
Oh man. The saddest jersey of them all.
The saddest jersey of them all.
Any other stray thoughts on, like, was this a referendum on anything, which I think is very silly? Was this anything about Penn State's growth this year? Obviously, the offense took a nice step forward against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. Continue to do so against a quality team. Say whatever you want about SMU's schedule, SMU's path here. It's a quality team. It's a quality
team. Look, I think SMU's season should be celebrated on a number of different fronts, not the least of which is getting into the playoff as a first-time participant in the power conference level.
Yeah.
That was something that at the start of the season seemed almost a ridiculous assumption. But the fact that they made it, the fact they played as well, I think the fact that they got better throughout the course of the year.
Yeah,
I credit Rhett Lashlee a lot. Again, watching all the games, it's clear the guy knows how to coach, and it's clear he has fresh ideas that he brings to bear each time the team goes out there. I give them a lot of credit. This is not so much an indictment on SMU. They just ran into an opponent that was, I think, significantly better on both sides of the football. We'll see where it goes from here.
Credit where it's due. James Franklin, with a team that's a healthy favorite, delivers for our friends in the desert.
Always does. When they're 7 to 21 point favorites, he's like 19-1.
19-1. He's
pretty good.
For everything he gets in terms of what Penn State does or doesn't do against Michigan or Ohio State. And this has come to be somewhat of a season defined by what you do against teams that you are big favorites against. James Franklin got it done. This was a big game, not the biggest game, a big game for Penn State, and the Nittany Lions left no doubt.
We have 2 quarterfinal matchups that are set. It's going to be the number 2 seed Georgia playing host to the number 7 seed Notre Dame in the All-State Sugar Bowl. We also now have the 3 seed Boise State playing host to the 6 seed Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl. That game is on New Year's Eve. Of course, we're going to do our part 2 preview those games and much, much more. We're also going to keep doing these reaction videos as well after each of the playoff games. Dan Rubenstein. Again, your final in State College, 38-10 on a very chilly day that people are still texting me about right now. The Nittany Lions are moving on through. We'll talk to y'all soon. Stay solid.
Peace.